So at the beginning of this year, I made a video talking about some books that I thought I could see myself, that I knew I was going to read soon, that I could see myself giving 5 stars, but could also potentially swing the other way. And then some books that I really wanted to love, but every time I brought them up, or my little bit of experience I've had with the book, people have indicated to me, no, Murphy, that one's not for you. So I really wanted to like them, and I really wanted to try them out, but I knew that they could very likely be 1-star books. I've now read them all, and we're going to talk about them, and I'm going to make some new predictions. So if you want to hang out with me and chat about some books that I thought I would love or thought I would hate, I was very wrong in my predictions sometimes. But sometimes I got them right. Sometimes my predictions were good. And then also make some new predictions. Let's do that. Let's hang out. The first book that I finished on this list was, whoops, sorry about that, Tress of the Emerald Sea. I felt really confident that this one was going to be a win for me because Sanderson is consistently a win for me. I love his books, and even his books that I kind of have less, even my least favorite books of his, I still have a good time. Even the ones that I kind of complain about and say, generally that was kind of a letdown, Cytonic, it's still, you know, I was fine reading it. So this was the one that I felt the most secure about on the list because Sanderson is just consistently, at the very least, a good time, and at best, a new favorite book. So I felt pretty confident on this one, and I was right. Well, actually, let's pay attention to what the concept of this video is. I predicted this would be 5 stars. Now, I don't really rate books. No, not really. I don't rate books, but for the purposes of this video, I will attribute star ratings. And I think I'd give this a 4, like a high 4, maybe even a 4.5. This was a fun adventure with an interesting lead that had a really satisfying arc, a phenomenal world, love the concept and execution of the spores. I'm always happy for a nautical adventure. Really, it did so many things that I love. It didn't do anything that kind of tipped it over the edge into a new favorite for me or into a 5-star, one of the best books I've read all year. It didn't do anything that strong, but I think my favorite part about this story was the world, and I really hope that we revisit this world in the future. But I think it was an awesome adventure. It's a standalone. It's a great starting point for Sanderson. Anyway, back to the concept of the video. I was technically wrong about this one, but I was right enough that I feel good job, Murph. I have a spoiler-free video for this on my second channel, which, if you don't know, I have a second channel where I do week-to-week reading vlogs where I discuss what I'm reading spoiler-free, and then I have spoiler-filled discussions on my favorite books that I read. This got a spoiler-free review because I read it immediately, and then there's spoiler-filled discussions on Brandon Sanderson's channel where he's running a book club. You can check those out if you want to. But anyway, not technically a win because it wasn't 5 stars, but win enough. I feel happy with that. Before we get into the next book on this list, I want to give a shout out to today's sponsor, Babbel, one of the top language learning apps in the world. I started using Babbel because we love to travel and explore new places, and when I do travel, I love to make connections with people. We've been to Puerto Rico twice now, and when we go, we typically like to go to less touristy areas where you may find people that speak English and you may not. First time I went, I didn't know any Spanish, and I floundered a few times when I tried to communicate. And the second time I went, I had been using Babbel for several months, and I had a baseline of Spanish understanding. I wasn't a pro, but I was able to communicate when I got into those situations where we were ordering food or we were trying to get help with directions or something simple like that, or even just meeting someone on the beach and wanting to talk to them and connect about some cool book they were reading. I got to talk to them, and I did okay. I still have a lot to learn, which is why I'm still doing my daily lessons, but I got to communicate with people, and that felt good. Babbel teaches real-world conversations. These lessons prepare you to have practical conversations about travel, business, relationships, and more. And these lessons are designed by real language teachers.
Yo pienso que una copa de vino siempre es una buena elección.
Yo quiero unos tacos al pastor.
A mí me gustan las enchiladas. ¿Tienen?
Use the link in the description or use this QR code to get 60% off your subscription. I'm curious what language you would learn, so let me know in the comments if you're interested. And thank you again, Babbel, for sponsoring this video. Back to the books. My first My first 1-star prediction that I was wrong about was The Magicians. I have that here. The Magicians. So this is a book that I every time I heard about it, I was like, this is gonna be a winner. I'm gonna like this. And every time I talked about wanting to read it, people commented, so many people, like emphatically commented and said, no, not that one. You'll hate it. And I both loved and hated this. It's like Narnia World and Harry Potter and like Amari and Nevermore and Magical School with Donna Tartt vibes. It's very academic and it's very challenging and it's very melancholy and I love it. I loved this different take and I loved how well Lev Grossman made me feel melancholy and captured melancholy in this book. I love the ideas in this book, this concept of this world, but I hated how rushed it was and how wonky the pacing was and how all over the place where you spend a ton of time focusing on one thing and then you rush through the next thing and I hated Quentin. And there were also just a lot of things in this book that were very distasteful. Some that I think were intentional to kind of show how these kids were rushing or trying to feel something in this very soul-sucking situation that they're in, and some that I think were just not intentional and just distasteful. I have already bought book 2, and I'm gonna read it. Anyway, right, concept of the video. So I thought this was going to be a 1-star, or rather I hoped that it wouldn't be, but I acknowledge that it very well could be. I would give this 4 stars. If the execution were stronger, I would give it 5. But it's not, so it's 4. But it could have been a 5. So I was super wrong on this one too. Here's one that I was right about. Guards, Guards. I expected this to be 5-star, and oh my goodness was it. This is my introduction to Discworld. I never thought that I would like Discworld because I thought I didn't like satire fiction, and then I read One Piece and I realized, oh, maybe I do. And then I read Hitchhiker, and then I said, oh, I do. And now I'm reading Discworld, and I'm just living my best life. What do I love about this book other than everything? I love Carrot. Carrot is the most wholesome, wonderful, squishy character. I want to squeeze him. He's so literal and good and just like a genuinely good guy, but also brings his own level of chaos. The chaos of this book is perfect. The humor in every scene is perfect. Okay, next book, Traitor's Blade. Okay. I was pretty right about this one. This was on the 1-star predictions. I thought that I wanted to like it. There were really positive reviews out there. People that I know and trust love this book, but there were also people that were saying, no, not that one. And it ended up being a no. So this follows, it's basically Three Musketeers. He's one of the Greycoats, so he was one of the king's men, his inner circle, the ones that he appointed and gave his own code, and they followed the king's law, and they enforced the king's law. But the king was killed, and the Greycoats were kind of shamed, and now they're not respected. They're pretty much hated, and he's still trying to fulfill the king's last wishes, as well as mourning and suffering through his frigid wife's circumstances. So, I would call this book Burn Notice. That's how I would describe this book. Did you ever watch the show Burn Notice, where it's this ex-spy, who's now doing his own thing, but he has all this spy knowledge, and so he does his own stuff, but really, really smartly. And the shtick, among a million other shows that, all the during the time of the CSIs and the NCISs and all of those shows, when these things were super, super popular, the thing that made Burn Notice stand out was his knowledge and his great interest in exposition. So this main character, whose name I don't remember, would do what he was doing in order to evade or in order to create some sort of bomb or something, to do what he needed to do. But there would be a narrator's voice, his voice, that would be overlaid, that would explain how he's doing what he's doing, why he's doing what he's doing, so that you could see how clever he is. And that's this book. So Falcio is very skilled, he's very talented, he's very strong, he's very knowledgeable, he's very smart, and everything he does He explains it to the reader. This is how you survive torture. You don't let them get in your head. You can handle the pain, you can disconnect from the pain, but just don't let them get in your head because that's how they get you. This is how you do the specific move, this specific fight sequence sword thing that I made up. Here's why it's so clever. This is how you check to see if someone has weapons. You don't frisk them, that's dumb. You're too close. You stand behind, you stay back and you say raise up your arms because then their clothes get tight and you can see if there's an imprint of it. Like everything he does, he exposes it. He likes to tell you how he's so clever. And so he explains it all to you as he's doing it. And this is just one of those books that I come away from saying, yeah, okay, I see why people like this. It makes sense. It's really fast paced. It's really, boom, crash, pow. It's very exciting and fun, but it's not my thing. But there are multiple scenes throughout this book that are just ridiculous that I just don't think the author really thought through that much. Anyway, I would say it's probably a 2. If I were to rate this, I'd give it a 2 because I didn't hate it, but there's not much I liked about it. But like what you like. I think that you should like what you like. A lot of people like this book. Okay, another positive one is Vagabond, which my copy was destroyed simply by reading it. How dare I? So Vagabond is a manga series. I would say that I probably got this one right. I think that where I am in the series now, it's definitely a 5-star. But the first arc of Vagabond, I wouldn't call it that. I'd probably give it like a 3.5, where I saw a lot of potential and I was really interested, but I wasn't amazed by it at the beginning. It's hard to do manga because they usually take a little bit of time to really get to the greatness. Like you need some build up. So if I were to just talk about the first arc of Vagabond, I would say it was probably a hopeful 3.5, where I saw a lot of potential, but we hadn't really gotten into that potential yet. So I guess I was wrong about that one. But it's a 5 now that I'm a couple of arcs into it and have gotten into the meat of what makes this story extraordinary, or at least I think I have. Maybe it just continues to get better, but I'm loving this. This is a historical martial arts story following a figure from a novel, Musashi, and it's Inoue's own spin on this tale and his additions and his elaboration. I haven't read the original, but a lot of physical, the martial arts side of it, but then also a lot of spiritual connections and, being connected with the heavens and the earth and being aware of your surroundings. And I just really like it. I've been having weekly discussions with Philip as we've both been reading through this series, and that has only amplified the story for me because we are really digging into it. So there is no just skimming past a detail. We just really, really get into it, which has only helped me to appreciate it that much more. Okay, next up, Next up is Hyperion, which I actually DNF'd. I got through the first 3 stories. So I did do The Scholar's Tale, which I think is considered the best. It's the time reversing for a particular character, an adult character, and then aging backwards. That's all I'll say. It's that one. I got through that one and then quit. Now, don't hear me wrong. I really enjoyed that one. I think it was written very, very well. But just overall, I'm not connecting with it. This storytelling style of multiple people giving their stories and these individual stories, and through that you're getting clues of the grander thing, and I'm just not enjoying it. The writing style is very dense. The stories are sometimes interesting, sometimes really not, and the overall thing that we're kind of unraveling layer by layer, I'm just not interested in. So while this is a book where I see a lot of merit, and I understand why people love it so hard, but I just was not connecting with it and decided to give up. I know that's a bumski for a lot of people, like a big bumski for a lot of people, but it wasn't suiting me. I'm not saying forever. I may come back to it someday and give it a go again, but I don't know. It wasn't for me. Don't hate it by any means. I think if I were to rate at least the amount that I've read, I'd give it a soft 3. I think that there's a lot of goodness in it and a lot to discuss in it, but I just wasn't enjoying the way it was being told. Shucks. Okay, next is The Shadow Casket. This one pains me. So this is the sequel to The Emberblade. I loved The Emberblade. It was on one of my best books of the year. I think I even put it in my top 10 fantasy series list, even though I had only read one book, but I was just so hyped about this one book. It's very, very strongly influenced by The Lord of the Rings and wears that influence on its sleeve. And I loved it. I love things that are strongly influenced by The Lord of the Rings. And I loved this kind of modern take on this modern telling of The Lord of the Rings, and the things that made this different I loved, but also all the many, many nods I loved. I just really, really enjoyed it so much. And the sequel, The Shadow Casket, was one of my most anticipated books of the year. And this is one that I was wrong about. I do enjoy this book. Just to be super clear, I do enjoy this book. But it was a lot of buildup to live up to. Great, but not, still a step down. And finally, for this section of the video, we have The Loving Spirit, which I predicted to be a 1-star. So Daphne du Maurier is one of my favorite authors, and I've read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of her books, now 7 of her books, and have loved them so much. But The Loving Spirit is a book that I started and DNF'd and just didn't talk about because of incest. This is a family saga where we follow 4 generations of this family. We start with Janet, who is an adventurer at heart, but because of the time that she was born in, she's not able to fulfill that side of her life. And so she kind of lives vicariously. Well, she happily has her domestic life, but as far as the adventure side of her, she kind of lives vicariously through her son. And then we follow his his son, and then his daughter. So 4 generations. And there is the story is that this loving spirit of Janet follows them. And there's a couple of scenes that are a bit supernatural where Janet's spirit kind of inserts herself into the story and watches over them, and it's very nice. But the unfortunate thing is that the way Janet and her son's relationship was written was incesty. I don't really have anything else to say about that. So I quit because I didn't want to read that, but then I gave it another go, and I acknowledged that, yeah, this could very well be my first 2-star du Maurier. And I was wrong about this one too, because it's not a 4-star. And in fact, if we removed the incest, then I would give it a 4-star rating, because following this family saga was very interesting. Seeing du Maurier, seeing a family saga done, a very Bronte style book, very Bronte style saga, seeing it done in du Maurier's voice and in du Maurier's storytelling was wonderful. This is du Maurier's debut. Seeing her and what she was to come, what was to come of her as a writer, and seeing her in her beginnings was wonderful. But I didn't like that one thing that cropped up a lot. I will say that I, for the life of me, couldn't figure out why du Maurier decided to write Janet and her son's relationship in this way. And so I ended up doing a little bit of Googling and learned that later in du Maurier's life, she started speaking more openly about the very unfortunate relationship that she had with her father. And that did help me to kind of accept what happened in this book, as du Maurier was working through some stuff and needed to write it out. And now, I still don't like it, obviously, but it did help me to understand it a little bit better. So, now that we've learned that I'm very bad at this game, we're gonna play again. The books that I plan to read in the next quarter, obviously I'll read more than just these, but the ones that will fit into this video concept, if you wanna follow along, I do have weekly reading vlogs on the second channel, so you can follow along with what I'm reading. But if you want to just do these quarterly check-ins with me and not do weekly check-ins, and just, here's a new list of books that I'm gonna read in the next quarter that I think could be either 5 or 1, but also could easily swing the other way. The only one that is not, that I just don't think is gonna swing the other way, once again, I have Secret Project 2 on this list. expect it to be a winner. I think that, I don't know if it'll be a 5-star, but I think that I feel really confident that it's going to be good, for me at least. And again, there will be a review up for this immediately after it's released on my second channel. So you can check that out really quickly if you like following along with that kind of stuff. The next book that I have, I'm going to go through my 5-star predictions and then my 1-star predictions. Next book I have that I could so easily go either way is The Magician's Book 2. I bought this used and it's taking a long time to come in the mail. I don't have it yet, but it could go either way. Based off of how book 1 went, where it was just an incredible concept and I loved so much about it and I saw so much potential in it, but the execution was pretty rough. Book 2 could either fulfill my expectations and prove to me that there's so much more to this story, or it could prove that I was really projecting a lot of my enjoyment, and book 2 I could just end up hating and it could change everything. It really could just go either way. So I'm putting it in the 5-star predictions, and I really, really hope I'm right. I have the Wizard of Earthsea on this one for a prediction of 5 stars. This is a book that I have already read before. I read it several years ago, I think 2 or 3 years ago, and I didn't like it. I think I gave it 3 stars. It was one of those where it was like, I see why you like it, wasn't for me. And I was a very different reader at that point in my life. I was very much more of a fast-paced reader and didn't want a quest, didn't want anything meandering, didn't care about immersive worlds that I can live in and explore. And I'm basically the opposite now. Who I was as a reader 3 years ago is basically the opposite of who I am as a reader now. It's fascinating to me to look back at the kinds of things that I loved and hated then and can basically say, oh, you hated that back then? I'm gonna try it again. And when I did my video last week for best written books, I asked for recommendations based off of the things that I said in that video that makes me think that these books are the best written. I asked for recommendations. What do you think are some best written books that I need to check out? And oh my goodness, did this come up a lot. So I'm giving it another go. Not the entire trilogy, this is a bind up, but just book 1, I'm giving it another go. And we're gonna see if this time current day Murphy has better taste than previous Murphy. The final book that I have on 5-star predictions is Lone Woman. Is it woman or is it women? I wrote down woman. This is a horror. It follows a woman who is traveling the United States. I believe this is a post-apocalyptic world, traveling the United States with a suitcase. And the mystery and the horror is what's in the suitcase. That's how I understand the plot. And horrors really can go either way I think for any reader, as well as mysteries, as well as kind of suspense, thriller. Like this genre, it just fluctuates so much how people respond because it's how effectively did the author portray these emotions, make you feel uneasy, as well as was the conclusion, the question, was it actually satisfying the way it was explored? So this one could go either way, but I'm really, really excited about the premise. I'm very hopeful. I'm gonna have a manga on each of these lists, the 5-star and the 1-star predictions. The prediction for a 5-star is I Want to Eat Your Pancreas, which was given to me by a friend. She said she cried so much reading this. It was very emotional, very thought-provoking, and that's exactly what I want. So I think this is it says the complete manga collection. So it's all right here. It's gonna be pretty quick for me to read, and I'm hopeful that I will love it, even though I don't even have a premise to give you because I don't even know that much about it. My battery's about to die, so we'll whip through these 1-stars. Conversations with Friends. It seems like the Sally Rooney books are extremely hyped in the literary reading side of BookTube and BookTok and Bookstagram and everything. It's just, they're hyped. There are some literary fiction authors that are just constantly talked about and constantly loved. Frederick Bachman is one of them, and since I talk about him too much, I might as well see if Sally Rooney would be the one for me too. I've heard really mixed things about this book. Some people think that it's just the greatest thing that has ever happened to them, and some people think that it's just trash. So I'm gonna find out where I land. Before the Coffee Gets Cold, this is a book that really moved one of my friends over on my Patreon. He read it and loved it so much, highly recommended it to me. This is I think 5 different people that have the opportunity to have coffee with someone who's died. And it's like the one last conversation with them, which sounds like something that I would very much enjoy. I think this is another literary fiction with a sci-fi kind of bend to it. But so many people are so underwhelmed by this book. It seems like people are either moved and they can't stop thinking about it, or they just say, this was nothing. So could go either way. I hope I love it. Next up is going to be another Hobb book. So, okay, here's where we stand. I've talked about this a couple times before. I'll keep it brief. I hate Fitz. I hate him. I don't want to read from his perspective. He drives me nuts. So many people love him. So many people say, oh, he's a dope, but he's my dope. I don't feel that way. I don't want to read from him anymore. So I said that I was going to skip Fitz and go straight to Rain Wilder, but there's one person that did convince me that this was at least worth a go. I'll put you on the screen because I don't remember your name off the top of my head. But for you and you alone, I will try the beginning of the second Fitz trilogy. I recognize that we are still not in the conclusion of Fitz' character arc, so he will probably still get on my nerves, but I will give it a go. I can't guarantee that I will finish this book, and I can't guarantee that I will like this book, but I will at least give it a go, and I will see if Hobb can prove me wrong, and I hope she does. But this could potentially, this could really go either way. Final book on this list is a manga, and it's Monster. It feels pretty unfair to put Monster on the 1-star predictions because obviously, like everything that I have on this list, I hope I'm going to like it. But it is, at least as far as I understand it, it is a mystery. I'm pretty sure this is kind of suspense, maybe light horror, but I'm pretty sure the main thread that drives it is mystery. I haven't read it yet, so forgive me if I'm wrong. But mystery is very hit or miss, almost always miss for me. I rarely enjoy a mystery plotline. Sometimes I do. I really want to read this. It was sent to me a long time ago. I had 5 volumes sent to me. I've been meaning to read it for a long time, and I just keep letting other things slip in front of it in my list. So I'm committing to reading it this quarter, and I hope I love it. But with it being a mystery, it really could go either way. So there you go. Conclusion to my last video like this. You now have gotten many reviews for those books, and predictions for the next quarter. Hopefully I will love and hate some of these books. Hopefully I love them all, but you know, it is what it is. Feel free to chat with me more about any of these things in the comments of this video.